Hi, Carol. How are you
Yeah,
doing today?
good. How are you?
So, we have seen that Scott is migrating his blog, but I know you from the Umbraco community.
Yes. So that's how we know each other. And I've actually just been redoing my blog on Umbraco from 7 to 8. And just migrating over content now. But yeah, also in the process of upgrading.
Nice. Um, so, can you tell a little bit about yourself? Who you are, where you're from, what do you do?
I am from Glasgow in Scotland in the UK. I'll try and speak as slow as possible because I realise that Glaswegians speak really quick. And I'm a developer and development team lead at an agency. So I mostly work in the .NET stack. And I organise a couple of meetups, and I'm just generally really interested in development communities.
Which meetups do you do?
I have a slide on this, but yeah, Ladies of Code Glasgow. And so we've had a meetup going for 3 or 4 years now, every month. And the Glasgow Umbraco meetup too,
Of course.
of course. And I'm also part of Scottish Developers, so we organised DDD Scotland a few years ago. We'll need to do another one soon.
Let's hope we can do that soon again. That would be
Yeah.
great. So, what are you going to show us today?
We are going to have a look at getting started with Blazor. And for me, it is a getting started as a .NET developer. I'm a C# developer, but I haven't done any Blazor for production. I haven't done any real life, if we call it that, Blazor development. This is just me having a bit of fun and seeing what we can do with Blazor.
Perfect. I haven't seen anything of it so far, so that will be really interesting.
Okay, good.
There will be one extra code, secret code, during your talk. Try not to laugh about it. And let's get started. You can share your screen.
Okay.
Then I think we say goodbye to Scott.
Bye,
Thank you.
Scott. That was awesome.
Uh,
No pressure going right after Scott. Can you all see my screen?
no, because I have to click a button. And there we go.
Great, thanks.
Take it away.
Thank you. If you have any questions or if I speak too quick or anything, just comment in the chat and I'll try and have a look for that. So yeah, let's get started. If it will let me skip slides. Yep, so that's me, obviously. I'm Carole. I'm a development team lead and I am from Glasgow, and you can get me on Twitter or GitHub or any of the socials on CR Grief, and my own site, the blog that I've just moved over, is on carole.dev. And as I just mentioned, Hank, I'm a meetup organiser for Ladies of Code Glasgow and for the Glasgow Umbraco meetup. And for the next little while, they're all going to be virtual. So if anyone wants to join us as a speaker or just to come along and say hello and see the awesome stuff we have to show, then you can sign up on Meetup. And I don't feel bad about advertising my podcast now because Scott done the same. But me and 3 friends, Emma, Laura and Lottie, host a podcast about open source and our experience as kind of active members of an open source community, and it's called Candid Contributions. So it'd be great if you have any feedback or any ideas for us to talk about for open source. So I wanted to give a little bit of history of, if this is me getting started with Blazor as a .NET developer, I thought it would be cool to talk about the history of my experience with C# and .NET. So I started about 5-6 years ago. I was a Java dev for a few years before that and switched over to .NET. So I was lucky, I guess, where I came in just after web forms. Didn't really have to do too much web forms. And I mostly came in as MVC was already up and running. So I found that most of the applications I was working with were .NET MVC. And then as the years went on, I found that more and more, so I guess I should have explained, I'm a back-end developer much more than I'm comfortable with the front end. So I found that more as a back-end developer, I was doing more web API. and I was creating endpoints for the data that then front-end developers for any dynamic content or any dynamic processes would then be doing in Angular and React, or good old plain JavaScript. So I thought it would be interesting to see what the future looks like. So part of my job as a tech lead is keeping an eye on what might the next thing be that we do. And Blazor kind of caught my eye because you can do, we'll be going to talk about it, but you can do some of these cool dynamic things you can do in Angular or React, but in Blazor and in C#, which as a backend dev, really was a good thing for me. So Blazor is an HTML framework, much like Angular or React or Vue, and it's used for rendering .NET on the client side and runs under WebAssembly, which we will chat about later. And it offers all the benefits of a modern front-end framework while working entirely in C#. So that working entirely in C# for me was like music to my ears. I can do some JavaScript, but it's not where I'm most comfortable. It doesn't come as naturally to me, as much as coding comes naturally to anyone, but you know what I mean. So for me, this was very much me. I was keeping up with JavaScript frameworks. I was constantly trying to, keep up with Vue. Was it React? Is it Angular? And trying to keep up. When I found out I could do C# but have it render in the browser, I was like Drake in the second photo there. So the advantages for me, and these actually come right off the Microsoft docs, is you can write C# instead of JavaScript. You can leverage the existing .NET ecosystem of libraries. So I think Scott mentioned earlier, being able to write things in .NET Standard and have them be kind of transferable between the technology. So if you already have some libraries that you work with in .NET Core or maybe even Xamarin, you can utilize those in Blazor as well. So as much as it's a new framework, you can build upon all of these packages and libraries that you know and love and you trust, which is really important. So yeah, you can share logic across the server and the client. You can use the same libraries both in server and client. And they've got the performance, reliability and security of .NET. And it's on a common set of languages and frameworks and tools that are stable, which is really important when you're learning a new framework. So it ticked enough boxes for me to decide, yeah, that I'll give it a go. So the main difference, when you first look into Blazor, you'll immediately come across the question of, well, is it client-side Blazor or is it server-side Blazor? So server-side Blazor, I think, has been out since last year, where client-side was still in beta until, I think, maybe February, March. I can't remember, but this year anyway. So it's much newer. So to have an initial look, the first one we'll have a look is at Blazor client-side. So all of the C# code and the Razor files are compiled into .NET libraries, and it's those that are downloaded to the browser. So we'll have a look later, but when you go to the Networks tab in Chrome, you'll see that it downloads those DLLs. And then Blazor client-side bootstraps the .NET runtime and configures the runtime to load the assemblies for the app. And it then uses a JavaScript interop, which I'll explain in a second, to handle all the DOM manipulation. So it's all done client-side. So here's a lovely picture from the Microsoft docs. I can't take credit for that. You'll notice that everything here is within this browser. So WebAssembly, for folks who don't know, sometimes it's kind of by its abbreviation there, is the compact bytecode for optimized fast download and maximum execution speed. So it's an open web standard that's supported across the web browsers without plugins, but I think it is the newer versions of the browsers. So maybe not, older versions of IE or anything. But yeah, it's a kind of standard across browsers that should work across all of them. And the JavaScript interop lets the WebAssembly code can access the full functionality of the browser via JavaScript. So all this .NET code that you're executing via WebAssembly is actually running in the JavaScript sandbox. And that kind of explains a little bit how it can do all this .NET stuff, but in the browser without having to hit the server. So server side, just to show the other side of it, provides support for hosting Razor components on the server in a .NET Core app. And the UI updates are handled over a SignalR connection, which I'll show an updated diagram for that in a second. That will explain. And the runtime handles the sending of the UI events from the browser to the server, and it applies those updates to the DOM using that connection. And again, it can also handle, it uses the JavaScript interop to make sure we can get this kind of browser functionality, but from your .NET code. So SignalR, for folks who don't know, is an open source library that simplifies the real-time web functionality to apps. So it lets you get that kind of single page app type functionality. It doesn't have to do a full page reload every time. It can go to the server, come back and dynamically update your site. So again, here's a nice diagram from Microsoft. And it shows here that it's got the browser on one side, and that's where your DOM lives. And on the other side, communicating with SignalR is your .NET Core app. That's where your Razor components are. That's where your .NET code is run. So although you get the single page app functionality where it dynamically updates the DOM, it still has to hit the server in the background. And again, if you open up DevTools and have a look in the Network tab, you'll see that the data go back and forth in there. So hopefully that's a nice quick introduction. So let's have a look. I thought we'll also do some live coding and have a look at what we can do. So if I open up Visual Studio, and I thought I would show, let me get the browser out the way there. Oh, you can see my cat. I thought I'd show just brand new, file new, how easily, and I don't use that term loosely. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, hey, you just do this. I want to show how quickly you really can get started with Blazor. So if we open Visual Studio and we say create new project, and you'll see here, you can choose Blazor app. So if we choose Blazor, and I call it Azure Thursday, no typos yet, that's good. Live coding is always fun. So if I do create, and it will come up in a second, just asking me, great, so do I want a server side or a WebAssembly app? So I thought I'd show the WebAssembly one, since this is the newer one that's just out of beta, so I thought I'd have a look here. We'll do create. And it's usually pretty quick, but obviously live demos, so we'll see how quick it goes. It's opened in another window. Here we go. So when this is a brand new app, I will build quickly, just storing some NuGet packages. Great, and hopefully soon it will give me the option to run it and show you how it works. But what I can do is have a little look around. So the first thing to have a little look at is in the main. So let's see how this actually runs. So it creates a WebAssembly host builder. So this is how it knows to run as a WebAssembly app. It adds the app, which will show you how that all hooks together. And you've got a HTTP client in here, which is great. So if we go to app.razor, and this is how it adds together the router, and it's basically, this is the stuff that it always does when you file new. I can't imagine you'd ever have to write this stuff. It's like when you do a file new MVC or a web API, it always adds it for you, right? You never have to really create it yourself. And if we have a look at the index, let's have a look here. So this is how Razor works, the Blazor works, sorry. And you'll see it's in a .razor file. If you do app page and then the root that you want it to be at, that's how the routing works. It's that simple. It says, hello world, welcome to your new app. And this here starts to show you how you can use components. So I know a lot of the things that people really like about React, for example, is how simple it is to componentize, how you can like break down your code into components and then use it, just, you know, put it on a page much like this, just drop it in and it works. So this then pops in this component, which is a survey prompt. And when we run the app, you'll see it. It's got some HTML. And you'll notice here, this is the first time we'll see that you can actually dynamically put in code, C# code that you maybe traditionally would have had on the back end. So you can do it at code, and that's where you can have that. So let's have a look at how that runs. You can run it in IIS Express and Visual Studio. It'll just take a little second to load. Here it is. Just here we go. So this you'll start to recognize and know and love is the template that you get when you start up a Blazor app from file new. So this is the survey prompt component here that we saw, and you'll see that it's kind of dynamically put into the index page, and you've got your nav here, which I'll show you. So as I showed, we have the nav. So we have here, it's got the navigation, it's got those links that we saw, and it's also got a chunk of code, which again, it means that we can use the, if anyone's used MVC, you'll notice that it's really like just the regular Razor syntax for Blazor. So again, it's kind of helped on the learning curve. I've not had to learn a new syntax. Like whenever I've learned, say, Angular, and then I've learned React, I learned Vue, there's always slightly different syntax, whereas at least as a .NET developer who knows Razor, I've been able to jump right into Blazor.
Hi, Carole. Hi.
Hi.
Sorry for interrupting. Can you zoom a little bit?
Oh, sorry.
Because, yeah, we're on...
Does that help?
It's even more smaller, yeah.
No?
Yeah, I think this is good.
Yeah. Ah, okay, great. Sorry about that.
Never mind. Continue, please.
Thank you so much, Henk. And let's have a look at the layout. Let's zoom in on that one. And yeah, you'll see on the layout, it tells us to put the nav in, and then you've got your main part of the code, which was the section on the right that takes up about 80% of that. And you say it does at body, and that's how it knows which page to put out. So you will recognize some of the patterns from working with MVC and with Razor if you are a .NET MVC developer. So let's look at one that does something a bit more interesting. So this is the one from the demo that you get. Not survey prompt, it's counter. That's what I want to do. So we have a counter. So we have some HTML that has a current count. It does the at syntax, and that's how you can put in dynamic data. You do at and then the variable or the method name. And it puts the current count variable. And it also here in the button, when you on click, that calls the increment count function or method. So that in the at code section, it persists your value. It's got what the current value of that is, and it also has the method there to do current count plus plus, and it increments that. So if I put a breakpoint in here and run this in IIS Express, great. So I will leave both open for now. Hopefully it's big enough. So if I go to counter and click, no, it's not hitting my breakpoint. Okay, don't know why the debugger's not attached. But when I click me, oh, it is attached now. So when I do click me, it goes into this increment count function, because that is what we had on the on click, and it calls that method. It updates that variable, and when I click through that breakpoint, it comes back and it's 2. Click that again, go through the breakpoint, and predictably now it's 3. So that lets you kind of see how you can interact with your code, with your Blazor code, from your HTML, all within the one file. So what I thought I would show was how I then extended the file new Hello World style app. And I have one, here's one I made earlier. I can drag that onto my second screen. So what I thought I would do is, as I mentioned, me and my friends have a podcast, and I've recently implemented, I'll need to make this bigger, an API feed that it dynamically brings in our podcast episodes to our website. So I thought, I've already got the code to do that in C#. I'll try and use it in Blazor. Hopefully y'all can see that okay. So what I've done is I've created a new page called podcast.razor, and I'll try and zoom in a little bit again. So in the HTML, it's got a check that says to check if the podcast is empty or if it's null, and it'll do loading. And then otherwise it will do a for each, and it will loop through this podcast list and put out the title and also a link so that you can go and listen to it. And how that data gets populated is from this code here. So what I have is I've actually created the models for these on the back end. So I thought it might be a cool way to show the models are in my DLLs. They're in the back end code, but I can reference those from my Razor. So if I go in here, I have my podcast model, and I'll show you in a second the API and how these come through. But a title and a playback URL are the main ones that we're going to use. So I have my list of podcasts. We've got our on-initialized async, so that's on load of the page, really. And I've got the path for the API that I want to call. So what I think I'll do first is show you what the API looks like. So if I call this Postman, and see what data comes back. And I always find when I'm integrating with APIs, I always use Postman first and see what the data looks like, and then I can start to build for it. So you'll see our latest episode came out yesterday, and it's called Bias. So we've got the title and we've got the playback URL, and they're the two that I've integrated with my site. Oh, wrong window, this one. So yeah, we do a wait, we use a HTTP client, which I should have mentioned. I've injected that into my Razor page so that it knows to include that that library that I need to use, and it lets me make HTTP calls. So I could do get from JSON. I'm converting it to my API response model, which I have, and we call that API path. And I know that in my API response, I have the set of objects that lets me do response.items, and items is my list of episode model, and I'll just show you that there. I have my API response, and the response has got a list of items in it. So there you go. Okay, so let's have a look, see if it works. So I've got a few questions. What is the amount of data loaded in the browser using Blazor? Well, I guess, as with everything, it will depend how hard the site is working, you know, how big is the site. But I'll show for this one what it does in DevTools. Yeah, so that's a really, really good question about how do you get around the initial sizable load of all the dependencies. Do you think it will get smaller in the future? So I will, first of all, I'll show you what it does in browser. The first load, it does have to get all those DLLs, and then as you navigate around, it doesn't have to get them each time. They're kind of stored locally. And I was chatting to someone, I'm not sure if this is the case yet, but apparently a lot of those common maybe the system DLLs and that HTTP client DLL, they should be in a CDN, and that way, you know, if we've used them, hopefully, you know, if Blazor were to get more adopted, if we've used them before and then we go to another site that has to use them, we've used them before, and hopefully they can be cached. And a few more questions. This is server-side Blazor that I'm using just now. And a good way to be able to tell, you can tell in that program file that I showed, but also when you're in DevTools, when you open the network tab, like I mentioned, you'll see when it's client side, it's a lot less noisy after that initial load. It has to do a lot on the initial load, but it's a lot less noisy in the network traffic. Whereas when you are on server side and it has to do those SignalR calls, it's kind of constantly having to call back and polls for SignalR so that it knows whether to update the DOM or not. So that's kind of a quick trick to be able to have a look. But I would recommend if you do file new in Visual Studio, do file new WebAssembly, do a file new server side and have a play with it. Like, you really can get started really quickly, and it lets you get a feel for the difference between the two. Maybe try and do the same thing in each app and see quite how differently you have to implement it. Spoilers, it's really similar. So I have done the same thing previously in both server side and client side, just as a bit of an experiment on how much I can reuse my code, and you can reuse lots of it. So that's good. So even if you decided to start off server side, but you re-architected and decided you want to do it client side, then you could still reuse a lot of that, both the Blazor code and the Razor files, but also your backend code too. So now that this is loaded, I will go to my podcast route. Hopefully it will load. Yeah. And there it loads in our episodes. It's got the episode name and it's got the link that you can link out and listen to it. So it worked. So to get a whole new route and to get it to go and call an API and pull all of this in, we only needed this much code, which I thought was pretty sweet. And as I said, I had some of the code for this on another repo, which is an Umbraco site. So it's not even .NET Core, but I was able to bring over my models and bring over some of my code for calling the API. So I thought that was really good. It kind of shows, yeah, you can reuse your .NET standard libraries, but you can just use a lot of your C# codes that you've already got to. So what I thought I would do is just have a quick look at showing how we can. Let's add this into the nav. So you saw in the Razor file that I made the app page /podcast. So that is my root. You saw that when I went to it in the browser. So let's add that to the nav. So how it does the routing is we have this nav link, which is a component, and you'll see the href there was counter for the counter example we showed earlier. Fetch data is another one that you get out of the box when you do file new. And I will make this one podcast. Do a nice headphones logo and make it can do contributions. Okay, I will build that. Is there any more questions? Is it possible to display some JavaScript in Blazor? I think so. I've not tried it, but I think once it enters a HTML, you should be able to use HTML too. Anything you would put in HTML or JavaScript. So it really is just a web app still. So you should be able to use the technologies that you already know and love, but in this. How does it work with dependency injection? Good question. You can. I've not got an example here, but you can. I think in the program CS, anything that you want to start up, you can add in some more services here. So you can, I think much like a lot of the .NET Core stuff now, it has some DI stuff built in, and you can add services in, and you can map from your interface and your service in here. But I don't have an example of a custom built one just now, but I have done in the past. And I'm going to link to, I'm going to show a link to some places that you can get a lot of resources and tutorials and stuff for Blazor. So hopefully there's an example in there. If I get around to it, I'll write a blog post about it. Okay, so I'm going to, that is built now. Yeah. I think your machine runs like 5 times slower when you're doing a live demo. Here we go. So it's got the usual hello world, and you'll see it's now added to the nav, my link, and it's now going to that route that I've built. So it is that kind of easy if we want to be able to add a new page, make it do something dynamic like calling an API, and also add it to the nav. I think they've made it really, they've done a really good job in this like starter kit when Visual Studio, when you do file new in Blazor project, to make it have some good examples that you can get started. The fetch data one also does like a mock API call. It just goes and gets data from a file locally, but again shows you how to get started with data. So I would really recommend it, kind of file new project and just having a bit of a play around, because that's what I've done. I'm not an expert in it. I still very much new at it, but hopefully that was a quick tour on how we can get started with it as .NET developers. So I thought I would do a quick recap of what I've learned, because some of the main things when looking at a new framework for me isn't just how cool is the tech, but it is how sustainable is it? What is the community like? What are the docs like? So let's have a look. For me, one of the big things was it was quick to get started with, and I realised I had the advantage of being an experienced developer, an experienced .NET developer, an experienced C# developer. But I do think once you've got Visual Studio, they do make it quite easy for you to get started. But I do appreciate I was coming from a bit of a head start in terms of tech stack. This was more when I gave this talk before it was out of preview. It felt like every time I went back to my example or to revisit how Blazor works now, it was updated the way it works. So I don't know if any folks are .NET developers. It was a little bit like when .NET Core first started to come out. Each version, there were significant changes to where things lived or how they worked, which is fine because it was still in beta, and that's how things get good. People test them, people make them better. I think now that it's both server side and client side are out of beta, it's probably a bit more stable. But yeah, this was just when every time I would come to it for a bit, I had a free weekend, would spend some time with it, and then maybe a few months later would come back to it and everything was different. But hey, that's how it works when you're using new technology, right? The dev community. For me, as I've mentioned before, I'm really interested in dev communities. I've got a lot of friends from dev communities, and it's how I learn. And it's how, when I choose a technology, I want to make sure it's got a strong community behind it, because selfishly, it means it's really easy to get help and to find documentation. And one thing I found really cool for Blazor is there's this, it's a GitHub repo actually, and it's called Awesome Blazor, and it's people have posted loads and loads of links to, I've got it open, I think, yeah, to different libraries that you can do. So here, yeah, here's one. You can do authentication with Blazor, CMSs with Blazor, maps. People have built kind of components, people have done tutorials. There's just so much help out there. Some of it will be server side, some of it will be client side, but I just find this really cool. It's an open source repo. You can contribute to it. It's on GitHub, and I just like, I think it's awesome to see, even before it was out, when it was still in beta, like this awesome Blazor page was really active, and to me that's a good sign of a strong community. I should say as well, the Microsoft docs, obviously I mentioned earlier, I stole some of the diagrams from there. The Microsoft docs are really, really good. And again, documentation is important. I think when you're looking at a new technology or a new framework, if you look at documentation and it's out of date, you're probably not going to choose it to be your framework for, you know, a work project to go into production. hosting. So when you do publish in Visual Studio, you get all of these options. You can do it Azure, you can do it in a Docker container. What's really cool, folks will probably already know, or maybe already know, that .NET Core you can host anywhere. You can host it in Linux, not just Windows, which is great. One thing I think is really cool about Blazor is you can host the WebAssembly version statically, so you can host it really anywhere. So instead of showing an Azure example in the Azure meetup, I thought I would follow, there's this cool tutorial that I can maybe post the link to, hosting a Blazor WebAssembly app and GitHub pages, which I thought was really cool. It's like, really, you don't have any hosting costs, you can host it in your GitHub repo for free. So I have done this. So this is the tutorial that I used on dev.to. I think it's awesome. And I have an example here. So you'll see that this is on a GitHub pages URL for my repo. And it's the same example we looked at earlier. And we can have a look around. We can click our counter. We can see our homepage. So this is the app. It's doing the dynamic stuff. It's it's calling the C# code in the browser, and this is all on a static Blazor app and GitHub pages, which I think is really cool. So this is it hosted on the URL, and this is it in the repo. So you see, this isn't the full app that I had here, and it's not everything that I had here in my Visual Studio app. It's just the published pages. And that's what the published profiles can do in Visual Studio. So what I done was, if I go back to this slide, I chose folder. I published it to a local folder, and I used that folder to put that up into a GitHub repo, which is this one. So the blog post takes you through a few things you need to do to make it work in GitHub pages. One being that you have to add the 404 page and add a little snippet to your index HTML. Because it's a single page app, it kind of confuses GitHub pages a little bit, just to let it know how the routing works. So it only took a few minutes to add that in. The blog post makes it really helpful for you. Which I thought that was really cool. I thought it really makes it more inclusive of a technology. You can host it absolutely anywhere for free, which is great. As I've already mentioned, documentation for such a new framework, kind of for early, I said some early adoption, and there's lots of documentation there. So for me, I wanted to know what was next. Is it just a new framework, or is there more to build upon? And what I thought was cool was I saw that they've kind of started working on Blazor PWA, so Progressive Web App. Blazor Hybrid, to let you do some kind of hybrid app type stuff, and Blazor Native, which lets you do things, native to devices. So I guess React Native is quite a popular one, and hopefully this is what's trying to replicate that. So it's good to see that the Blazor team are trying to take it beyond just web and to make it a kind of full framework that we can use, hopefully on some other devices. And for me, what will be really, really important will be developer adoption of Blazor, because that's how a framework makes or breaks, really, isn't it? It's do people use it? Are people contributing back? It's Microsoft. It's part of the .NET, so it's open source. Is it an active open source community? Is it an active developer community? With folks blogging about it, doing videos about it, giving examples, and are there some really strong examples in production? Would be really good to know. That's kind of what helps me make a decision on whether I would use it in production, really. So for me, I had it way back at the start of my slides saying, is it the future? I'm not sure is the answer. I still need to keep a bit of an eye on it. I think I need to build some bigger apps with it, still just for fun, to see if it scales the way that I would want it to for a real client project. And for me, it's still at that early point where it could be, the new way of working. It could be, it could be the React and it's really adopted. It could be Silverlight or something like that that doesn't get adopted. So we'll see. But is my sitting on the fence answer. But it'd be really cool to hear if any of you all have used Blazor or plan to, and yeah, to start a conversation around it really. So yeah, if you want to chat about it, please do say hello on Twitter or ask any questions now. I think we have some questions. So that's me. Thank you so much, Henk and the team, for asking me to come along. And to Billy, hopefully my accent was understandable enough that you could yeah, it was all good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you very much. Very interesting session. I really like the syntax of Blazor. I'm a real C# developer, so I'm a big fan of it. Yeah.
Awesome.
There are a couple of questions though that we can ask. Martijn is asking, are the browser HTML capabilities like navigator.getUserMedia available in the C# Blazor code? Or do we need to keep using JavaScript for now?
Good question. I'm not sure, I'll be honest. But I think, as I mentioned, with it still being just HTML, CSS, and all the web technologies we use, I think if we do have to use the frameworks and the libraries that we like from JavaScript, I think we can, much like we do when we're doing an MVC app, we will still use JavaScript if we need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a question from Vinesh. It was a bit back in your presentation, but he wants some insights of how routing works in Blazor. Is that also described on the awesome Blazor browser or the Microsoft documentation?
In the Microsoft documentation, and hopefully, I'm not sure if that was before or after I showed the example of how we can do the routes. So we can do, app page and add in the route to our .razor page, and then we can link to it, use it like I did in the nav example. I'm not sure if that's what you mean, but yeah, if a combination of trying out the kind of sample project and also using the documentation from Microsoft, and yeah, the awesome Blazor resources are really good because it's people have given loads of examples of how they've built things beyond just the hello world type example.
Okay, nice. And do you think it's ready for commercial websites? Keeping in mind the search engine scroll and indexing? I'm
not too sure. I'm not sure if I would use it just yet. For a site that I was leading the build of, but I'm really interested to see how it grows and to see some examples of how people do use it in production. I think for search engines crawling and stuff, I think single page apps not always, but they can have a bit of a challenge, being that they are a single page app. But yeah, much like they have that challenge with React or Vue or something, that yeah, it's something to think about.
Okay, great. I think that were all the questions. Maybe we missed some, but they are definitely in the chat, so maybe you can take a look.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you.